Hello, welcome to the UEA Catholic Society Podcast. This is Galilee episode. Let's go with 1.1 because we're probably going to discuss. Yeah, because we're going to be discussing topics that we talked about yesterday anyway. So,
Nice.
I'm Jamie.
I'm Carmen.
Hello, I'm Igor.
There we go. Welcome to episode 1.1. So yesterday, me, Igor, and then Carmen, we talked about the recent news regarding the FBI in America and traditional Catholicism. Have you heard anything about it?
No.
All right. So basically, so a document was leaked from the FBI that involved the investigation of Catholics as like an extremist group.
What?
So basically, let me read some of this article real quick. So basically, it revealed that the Bureau's Richmond division launched an investigation into radical traditionalist Catholics and their possible ties to the far-right white nationalist movement.
Oh my days. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, nothing quite says, extreme, full-blown racists like
Yeah.
Catholicism, does it? I mean,
Wow.
obviously they're connected,
Very connected.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. That's interesting.
yeah.
And what did they find? That's...
I think as well. I don't think. I think it was just like. I'm not exactly sure on the nature of the document, but like it was basically showing that they were actively investigating like traditional Catholic parishes and stuff.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's.
I'll be happy. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what they find.
Yeah.
We'll
Well, I
see.
mean, I don't think they found anything. And
Yeah.
they're like retracting the document now, so I'm pretty sure they're basically deleting it because obviously it got leaked and now it had a bunch of backlash, understandably,
Yeah.
because it's a ridiculous idea.
That's
so-
crazy.
and-
When did this come out?
I think on the 10th, February 8th, it was the leaked document was published, so a couple
Wow.
days ago or so. Don't know why I looked at my watch then as if I didn't look at the date.
I mean, it's 11th today, but
That's mad.
just so everyone knows, 11th now.
Yeah, so we're recording this on the 11th.
I don't actually know what to say. That's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So
I
they
know.
just decided, oh, the Catholic Church might be racist. Let's make an investigation.
Basically, yeah. I think
Wow.
Ben was talking about how he was wondering if this was like partly linked to, because it's like running up to the election period.
Oh,
if they're like
yeah.
looking for like a scapegoat or something like that. But then again, I feel like governments and organizations have been targeting Catholics for ages anyway, so it's no surprise.
It's nothing new.
Nothing new,
True.
but
But still saddening.
I saw a funny meme the other day about this, and it was about like, could you imagine like an FBI agent going to mass as part of like the investigation, pretending to be a Catholic, and like
I wouldn't be surprised actually.
I mean, to be honest, I wonder if like any actually like what like turned up at mass and ended up converting, because that would be pretty funny.
I feel like what they did is someone just came up with that idea, just like as part of the political game, just as like you said, maybe for a scapegoat. And then probably, I feel like the worst that happened is they sent some lower ranking FBI goons to a parish just one time just to see what happens, and then they came out probably inconclusive.
Well, to us, I think they looked at multiple parishes, because I think the document mentions like the Society of Saint Pius X, for example, which is like its own kind of. It's basically it's a society that does Latin masses, but like there's a lot more history to it. Like I think it's in like an irregular canonical relationship with the church, because like
Interesting.
the.
I don't want to change subject, but
No,
like
go ahead.
the Latin Mass thing, I'm
Yeah.
quite interested in like. I don't really understand why there's problems about it. Like why are some people like, ooh, Latin masses, ooh, and then others are like, well, Latin mass is not necessary or something.
Yeah.
Apparently, Pope Francis banned, but I'm not so sure. I don't know. Did he ban it?
He's put a lot of restrictions on it, because I think the way it works now, like if a priest wants to celebrate mass in the old rite, which is like the Latin version, he has to like ask permission from his bishop. Yeah. And like there's more stuff to do with it as well. So the bishop has like grant
it is
permission.
bureaucracy,
Yeah.
like essentially. And like you have to go through a lot of unnecessary, not paperwork, but just talks to allow it.
That seems so unnecessary. I mean, that's my
opinion. But we've already said this is very much
my
an opinionated podcast, so you know it's.
I guess it's an extension of how society is very polarized now, even in the Catholic sphere.
Yeah, even within the church.
There's just like the whole debate about whether we should allow Latin Mass or does it divide people this here and here.
I mean, the people who like regularly go to Latin Mass and advocate for it, like their arguing point is that if anything, it's the new Mass that's more divisive because technically, if the new Mass hadn't come about, then there wouldn't be this issue because Masses would still be primarily in Latin.
Exactly.
I mean, personally, I've only been to one Latin Mass. Like an actual Latin Mass in my life, and it was in like a St. Pius X chapel, like in near Herne Bay or something. So it was like an hour drive at least, and it was interesting. It's very different to a Novus Ordo Mass in that like the congregation very rarely actually like because obviously like in a Novus Ordo Mass that we go to most of the time, you know, the congregation kind of like back and forth with the priest. And, like in the Latin Mass, there's very little of that.
So it's more the attention's
is more
towards
I mean also it's ad orientem as well, so the priest is facing the altar.
Oh yeah, the other way.
So yeah, it's very much facing the altar and God, which is kind of a nice part about it, you know. But
the only thing I remember, my own mum, who's very religious, she went to a Latin Mass and she was like, she found it very boring.
I mean,
was like, if she's saying that,
I mean,
imagine me.
Yeah, but the thing is, like that Latin, like it was decent Mass and everything, but there was long periods where like you know the congregation wasn't doing anything like verbally. I mean, I could see like there were people praying the rosary and stuff like that, and had like little prayer books and stuff, which is which is fine. I mean, in the past, you know, before the Second Vatican Council, that happened all the time. You had people praying in Mass, and the priest would be doing his thing. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, and like when it came to the priest's sermon, he went on for like 40 minutes. It wasn't a bad sermon, but like I was dozing off near the back. I'll be honest, you know, and I try and pay attention to the priest, but and I kind of wonder like, well, if the point of it is the Mass, why is your sermon going on for 40 minutes? Yeah, you know, but I don't know.
What kind of Mass was this?
It was a Latin Mass, but it was celebrated by a priest who belongs to the Society of St. Pius X. Do you guys know a little bit on them? If not, okay, well, it's a juicy topic. It's a juicy topic, so I'll find some info on it. So basically, way back, well, I don't say way back, but I think this is kind of around the Second Vatican Council kind of period. So there was a French archbishop. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. It's like Lefebvre or something. But
that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Was he a
controversial
heretic or something?
Well, I don't know. Some people might accuse him of that. I think that's probably a bit harsh. But so basically, what he did was he. Wait, let me see if I can find an article that just briefly summarizes it. Questions? Do I go for a secular website or do I go on a Catholic website? Let's go to Britannica.com and see what that says. But basically, the short story is that he ordained priests and maybe bishops without the Pope's permission.
Oh, I think I've heard about this. Yeah.
Which some people say that automatically excommunicated him, but other people say otherwise. There's actually an interesting interview on the Pints with Aquinas podcast with a guy who like used to be involved with the Society of St. Pius X in like the law side of it, and like that guy was arguing that like he was excommunicated, but I don't know. That's a whole other thing. But basically, so Lefebvre opposed a lot of the changes begun by the Second Vatican Council. And so here on Britannica.com it claims that he was excommunicated in 1988 for consecrating new traditionalist bishops without the approval of the Holy See in Rome. So
isn't there a similar thing going on in Hong Kong though? Because I remember what's his Cardinal, yes.
Yeah. Apparently got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize recently.
Did he?
Yeah, but sorry, continue.
I didn't know that. Apparently, the communist government is the one who chooses the bishops there because they don't want, like, the Catholic Church to influence the population or something. Like, they want to control what's going on.
Yeah, the CCP, is very much, they just want the people to listen to the party and not to the church. So
that's kind of like what's going on there, isn't it?
Kind of similar. I mean, Lefebvre's motivation was that he disagreed with a lot of the changes of the Second Vatican Council and wanted to maintain tradition quite strictly. So that's why he consecrated these bishops, because, like, obviously he wasn't going to live forever, so he was, like, continuing that kind of an act of defiance. But some people say it was, like, righteous because, like, I don't know. It's it's a very juicy topic.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly. But then it raises the question, like, well, where do you draw the line with being obedient? Like, you know, if your superior is perpetuating something that is possibly wrong, would you still obey? But, like, it's a tricky topic. But just to briefly come back to, like, the CCP and the relationship with the church, I think, like, the Vatican and the CCP have some kind of agreement in place at the moment where, like, the CCP does pick bishops, or at least they nominate them. I'm not sure. I'm not that well read on it.
Yeah.
But there's some controversy there.
Yeah.
Which is weird to think about, that you have, like, bishops in China which are, like, sponsored by the Communist Party in China. It's like communism is not compatible with Catholicism. Like, plenty of popes have written on it.
That's quite bad. And why was I'm not very informed. I was just kind of skimming through the news and
I mean, that's what I do most of the time anyway.
But why was Cardinal then? Was he incarcerated, or like he had a problem or something?
I think like he was put on trial or something in Hong Kong. But the thing is, people were saying it was to do with, like, I think people were saying that it was more to do with, like, him being a Catholic bishop or whatever, and him not going along with what the CCP wanted. But I think the actual specific reason why he was put on trial or fined or something was, I think it was something different. Like something to do with, because obviously Hong Kong's a contentious place anyway in terms of politics. And I think because he had some links to protesters or something. Because I think he was advocating for, like, their rights, or, like, trying to raise money for their legal bills or whatever when they were being prosecuted. I don't know, like, I'm not that well read on it either, so I'm just trying to put together some thoughts that I remembered. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the time with these kind of things, you find out when you actually, like, read into it more, like, the common assumption about why it's happening, it's not the actual reason. Like, it's more specific.
Media.
Yeah.
Fake news.
Yeah. I was about to do a Trump impression and say fake news, but no, my confidence wasn't there.
You can do it, Jamie.
Nah.
Fake news.
Maybe later. Fake news.
That was good. That was a good one.
Okay, we'll decide whether we keep that in or not.
Of course we're keeping it up.
Of course we're keeping it in. It's the best impression.
Oh, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, where were we?
Well,
we were just talk about Hong Kong and stuff, weren't we?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
What else?
We're actually going to end up talking about communism now. Like, we were joking before that we were going to talk about communism.
Our housemate Rafif, he was joking that that we should talk about communism on the podcast. And, like, we now literally are. It's a shame Rafif went to badminton. Rafif, if you're watching this, you're missing out.
True.
To be fair, I wouldn't mind talking about communism because I want to know about it. I don't really know. Like, I know the basics.
Yeah.
It sounds nice on the surface, but it's not in practice.
Yeah.
And I always thought, though, that it sounds a bit like, you know, the Last Supper with the Jesus and that.
Yeah.
And, you know, sharing, I don't know, like the principle is like sharing your resources with everybody, you know? I don't know, it just sounds like, but I don't really understand communism. I guess that's what I mean to say.
I mean, it's sort of, it's just very idealistic, too idealistic, where in the perfect world, communism would probably be the best way of handling economics, but since we don't live in a perfect world, it's full of sin, it's full of greed, it's full of just pride and hatred. There's a reason it never works out every time it's established.
I mean, there's that practical line of reasoning why it's not a actual good system to use. But I think the point that the church largely teaches on regarding it is that with communism, like it kind of disregards the individual dignity of a person, because it's like you don't own anything yourself. You own. Well, I mean, if you look at Soviet Russia in general, like as well, just in terms of its social teachings and stuff, it was very much anti-Catholic. Like I think Karl Marx wrote about like the family unit and how somehow it was linked to capitalism, and so therefore it needed to be like dismantled or something. I don't know. It's been a long since I read any of that stuff, but so from a cultural perspective, it's not just an economic system.
It's very much a cultural thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the only bad thing that I knew about it was that you don't own anything basically.
Yeah.
Like, private property doesn't exist. Interesting.
Well, it is innately just anti-Catholic. Like, first of all, the notion that it strips away individual dignity, but communism itself is more so Marxism, but it's linked with atheism, because that is kind of like a byproduct of it, because religion is like a unifying factor for nations, and for communism, that religion becomes the state.
Yeah, the government.
Most of the time.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, I've got an encyclical here on the Vatican website by Pope Pius XI on communism and the like. Let me just see if I can find a good paragraph to read out. 1937. So this is after the communist revolution in Russia. And I think this is kind of around the time, I was going to say that like Stalin and Trotsky and stuff were having like a power struggle, but I think that was a little bit earlier. Because this is technically only 2 years before the start of the Second World War. And I think by that point Stalin was in power.
Well, I mean, we were going on about families before, I just thought about it a bit now. But on the whole topic of family units, communism is very much a system that would strip away family units in the West and most of Europe, because in the West, the family unit is the nuclear family, or it's in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
And a big aspect of that is the whole, you grow up with your parents, then as you age, you find a partner, and you start your own family. If you look at all the countries that did implement communism, a lot of them don't have that family structure. They have forgot the term for it, but like that, I guess tribal. I don't think that's the right word. Where whole families live under a single roof. So, and they're all led by like the oldest male of that family. So it's usually,
this is in like communist countries.
Yeah, right. So like that's like China, that eastern sphere, and then Russia as well. Russia less so, but a lot of its historical influences from the east, like that, from the Mongols. So they also have some aspects of that family.
Yeah.
And it, like, there's a reason why it all appears in those family structures, because people were just grown up to understand that there is like a head state in terms of like strong male old figure in the family, and then everyone else is just a pawn, essentially, and that's why you don't really there's so much clash of communism in the West, because it does innately go against all of Western theology and history.
Yeah.
There's no freedom there, it seems, as well.
I think as
No
well, like
freedom of expression, maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to say, I think in the West as well, where communism has become more popular, and I don't mean like specifically communism as it's like defined in literature, but I mean kind of communist attitudes or socialism maybe more broadly. I think in America particularly, if you look at like families, and because if you compare families in America today to like 50 years ago, like in terms of the nuclear family unit and stuff, like in so many families in the US now are like so dissolved and broken.
Yeah.
I think a large reason for that is like, I mean, the main reason is moving away from God, because that's usually the root cause of everything at the end of the day.
True.
But
the root cause for everything bad.
But a large reason for it as well is because like
exactly, you need that.
Yeah. But like, because like, socialism is an attractive thing to young people who like do a bit of reading on it, but they don't really look into it that much. So I feel like you have a lot of young people in the US and in the West who are kind of entranced by that ideology, and they think of it as like, oh, it's like we just need to follow this, and things will be nice and utopian, and then they neglect traditional values and like the family unit and stuff like that, and then so you have cultures starting to sort of degrade in that regard. But before anyone else says anything, I'll just quickly quote a couple of popes about communism. So Pope Pius XI, in as early as 1846, pronounced the solemn condemnation which he confirmed in the words of the syllabus directed against that infamous doctrine of so-called communism, which is absolutely contrary to the natural law itself, and if once adopted would utterly destroy the rights, property, and possessions of all men and even society itself. And also, there's Leo the 13th. He defined communism as the fatal plague which insinuates itself into the very marrow of human society only to bring about its ruin. So, yeah, so strong words on the topic. I mean, this is a huge document anyway. I mean, you guys can probably see it from where you're sitting, but there's lots of stuff here. So yeah, Church is pretty definitive on it.
All that about communism.
On communism, yeah.
Wow.
Not enough.
There's probably more than just this document.
There's definitely going to be more. But
yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially anti-church.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
just look at,
that's so true.
Just look at Soviet Russia and how much they persecuted the Christian church as the Soviet government took power.
Sorry, I just had a random thought. This is like so irrelevant. Well, actually, it's relevant, but it's like far away. So, my parents are from, well, me too, from Equatorial Guinea, and it was communist at one point. And there was a point where Equatorial Guinea is Catholic, predominantly Catholic, and when the dictator came to power, he collaborated with the communists in Russia or something. Something like, my history might be off, I'm sorry, whoever's watching this, and they're like, what is she saying? I'm sorry, I'm like paraphrasing, but I'm close to the truth. So the dictator was communist, and he shut down all the churches. Everything was shut for like years and years. You could only celebrate mass in secret for a few years, so it was a bit crazy.
Which,
and I was like, oh, communism, no churches. Okay.
yeah, I mean,
makes sense.
funny enough, because I'm Polish and Jamie is half Polish, so we can.
So we've got strong feelings on communism.
Yeah, we can. The same exact story applies to us as well.
Wow.
And to be fair, I think that is a big reason why Poland is probably the most Catholic country in Europe at the moment, because
it really is.
Because Polish culture was suppressed by the Soviets for so long, and they tried to repress it and change Polish culture into Russian culture, and but obviously Polish people being proud people, they weren't gonna give up on it, and so they built really strong, like I guess, like shadow cultures away from the Russian eyes, and a big part of that was religion, because it does just bring people together and brings like a strong unit as a whole.
Well, I mean, in Poland, like the culture is very much centered around Christianity and Catholicism. Like I'm pretty sure King Casimir, maybe the Great, I don't know which number, but one of Poland's kings like are pretty much like dedicated Poland to Mary or Christ.
Yeah.
So it's one of the few countries that actually like a leader has declared that to be a thing.
Didn't one of the kings in was it Walsingham? Am I making this up? In Walsingham, didn't he do the same? Like he consecrated England to Mary or something.
I want to say Edward the Confessor, maybe, but I'm not sure.
Probably, it sounds familiar.
I think it was Edward. I feel like remembering.
I think is Edward the Confessor a saint?
He is.
Yeah.
Is he? I have an interesting topic actually.
You sound very enthusiastic.
No,
now that you said about basically I was having a conversation with my uncle about saints, right? And he said, well, saints are quite subjective. Like the canonization is quite subjective. Like how obviously there's a process to get to like how you determine if somebody is a saint or no.
Yeah.
But he says, well, there's saints in a particular part of the world. Like there's there's a lot of saints in Rome, for example, other than in Africa or in
Bangladesh.
Israel or Bangladesh.
Very specific.
You know what I mean? So he's like, well, I don't know. What was the question? He said, like, it's very biased. I don't know, something like that. And I was just thinking, well, in my head, I thought it makes sense because, I mean, it's not a good or a bad thing, but the early Christians were not necessarily, well, probably, they were not black or...
Yeah. Well,
it started where it's in a specific location.
Yeah, it started in the Mediterranean.
Yeah. So obviously the early saints will have specific characteristics. But then at the same time, the church has evolved, like is gone now, is universal. Yeah. So I think he's right in a way, like there should be more saints from, I don't know.
Well, I think when I understand...
sorry. I was just going to say, obviously the canonization is not the most important thing. We should all aspire to be saints in our daily lives, you know? But, I don't know, maybe there needs to be more visibility.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, I mean, it's great when saints are canonized officially within the church, but that doesn't mean that, like, if you're not canonized, no one is a saint.
No one's
there's plenty of saints who have lived their lives quietly and died, and no one knows about them.
True.
Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, you're not going to be able to recognize every saint in the world anyway.
Yeah. That's why we have All Saints Day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, in regards to there being more like a high concentration of saints historically in certain areas of the world than others, I mean, it just comes down to the history of Christianity in that area and how prevalent it's been and how influential it's been.
I mean, it is just very Western centric, just because it is a Western religion.
I mean, before the
well, is it a Western religion? Its origins are not Western.
I think a large reason why people consider it to be a Western religion is partly because it formed a large basis for like the current institutions in place today in the Western world, even though that's now kind of
I mean, it's Western in terms of Western civilization was built off fundamentally off of Christian teaching.
I think a large reason as well why it's considered that is because, especially you have the British Empire that spread a lot of Protestant Christianity to its colonies. Which is an interesting topic in of itself, in that, like, is it a good thing that the British Empire spread Protestant Christianity, or would it have been better if they didn't do it at all? Because I remember having a brief conversation with someone, like, in first year. It was like a guy who came to Catholic a few times. I don't know if he's still at the university, but and he was of the opinion that he thinks that the British Empire had partly a good effect in that it spread Christianity throughout more of the world. Even though it was Protestant Christianity, technically it was still Christianity. And at that time, it was not as bad as contemporary Protestantism today. Which is, I don't know, I wasn't sure how to feel about that particularly.
Well, I mean, if you can take the examples of Anglicans, because...
I mean, that was what the British Empire was spreading.
Church of England, right? But, not to get too heated, right? But probably... strayed away from some Christian teachings, right?
I mean, well, obviously.
And but then like there's a big sector of Protestantism in Africa, I think, especially around and Nigeria, like, is Anglican, but they're a lot more traditionalist, and outside they're probably closer to Catholicism than to contemporary.
I did see something on Instagram. I don't know if it came from the Anglican Church, but apparently they're trying to change the word he to non-binary.
Yeah,
I don't know,
I
something
think
like
I
that.
did, but yeah, like they were like redrafting the Our Father. So
Yes.
Our Father, it was Our Parent.
Yeah,
who
I
art
was
in
like,
heaven.
oh my goodness, what is happening?
How do you know he'd
What's
want you
going
to
on?
refer to him as a parent?
Right.
Yeah. No, yes, no, that's just.
It's a slippery slope.
If you really deep it, technically God's preferred pronouns are he, him. So
I mean, it's how he refers to
that's how
himself.
he refers to himself. So we should
True.
abide by his want and
Exactly.
call him by his preferred pronouns.
It's interesting.
Well, I mean, technically, if you were to be extra specific, it would be I am, but I guess that's a little bit.
True.
But yeah.
I am who I am.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. The whole pronoun business is bizarre.
No, we're moving on to this now.
That's another topic.
Remember, opinionated podcast.
No, it's very factual. This is all facts.
I mean, it's opinionated, but I mean, some people have the right opinions about stuff.
It's true. It's true.
Just making an observation. I'm not claiming anything, but you know.
All intellectuals are equal, but some intellectuals are more equal than others.
So what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the Anglican Church.
Yeah.
I have more questions than answers. Sorry.
I mean, it's good.
No,
it's good.
I've enjoyed this.
Gaps. It's good.
So the Anglican Church. What's the difference between the Anglican Church and the Church of England? Is it the same thing?
It's the same thing, pretty much. I'm quite sure.
As in Church of England is Anglican, but Church of England is specifically Anglicanism in England, like the organization, the Anglican organization in England, or because like they have Church of Scotland in Scotland. I remember like coming across a few of them when I was in
And in
Scotland.
Wales as well, they have Church of Wales.
Yeah, it's I mean they're not dissimilar, but they do have different takes on situations. But they are all Anglican, so it's specifically Church of England.
So that's what Anglican means. So when you said Anglican in Nigeria or wherever, so that means they have the influence of Christianity of the Church of England here, is it?
I mean, I'm not too sure. I just know that that in terms of Anglicanism, you also get high Anglicanism and low Anglicanism, and they do things differently. And the high Anglicanism is like closer to Catholicism in a sense; it's slightly more traditional. But I don't know much the nuance.
Like,
I mean, we should probably read up on this sometime.
There is a high Anglican church near where I live in Luton, and I know that the inside looks more like a Catholic church than you would think of it, because if you went in there, from the outside it looks Anglican.
Yeah, is it a newer building?
It's I don't think it's.
Because I was about to say, it's
not
the reason
new.
why it might look like a Catholic church inside is because it used to be
Yeah.
a Catholic church.
But then you go like I think it's the structure itself probably a bit old, but then the inside's renovated and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you can tell you go in, it feels Catholic, but you can tell something's off.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
Interesting. I was shocked. I still remember the first time. I think it was an Anglican church. I think I went in there thinking it was Catholic, but it looked a bit odd because there was a bird or something, like a massive statue of a bird, and I was like, "What is he doing there?" And I saw the altar with the red candle. You know, the Lord is there, like signaling that the Lord is there. So I thought, oh, okay, this is a Catholic church. And the reverend, I think it's the reverend.
Yeah,
call them.
usually how they refer to it.
So I called him father, and he said, "No, I'm not a father. I'm a reverend." I was like, what is a reverend? What do you mean? And so he was like, he just explained to me, this is an Anglican church. This is a place where Catholics, for example, can come if they're not allowed to receive communion in the Catholic church. They can come to this church and receive it. And I was like, what?
I mean, this
what do you mean?
Oh, and you can pretend to receive communion, but it's not real
Yeah. I was like, wow. So I asked him.
Oh, sorry.
And so I asked him, so do you believe that Jesus is in there with the, like, because obviously I saw the red candle, I thought, so there's the sacrament there, and he's like, no, it's just a symbol. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So I was shocked. I was like, so they have fake. Well, I feel mean saying that, but they have fake churches in.
I mean, from a Catholic perspective, it is fake. It's not.
Wow.
It's not
That's
genuine.
shocking.
It's just purely visual.
They have a very much more like symbolic view of Christ's presence, not present.
Yeah.
Because we actually think that like Christ is like here or there, but then for them it's just like you just feel he's there essentially. But is he actually there? We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
That's strangely said that like, oh, this is a place where Catholics can come to receive
Yeah.
communion if they can't get it in a Catholic church. But that shows he's got a very poor understanding of Catholic doctrine anyway, because obviously like that's not how communion works in Catholicism.
I was like, wow. So you're going against what the Pope?
Yeah, at that point it's like they're just like they're very open, but they're open to the point where they destroy actual Christian teachings for the sake of allowing everyone. I mean,
they're too malleable.
Yeah, because there's a difference between like forgiveness and then just accepting sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I feel like they do a bit too much of just accepting sin.
That's mad. Oh, on the topic of
Sorry to all Anglicans. That's my opinion. You can have a personal discussion if you want.
It's never too late to come back to Rome, guys. It's never too late. We're waiting.
True.
Mass is at 6 p.m. on Sundays.
Rome has a lot better weather than England, so.
What was I going to say? On the topic of the Eucharist, that's a very important one. What do you guys think? I know obviously the teaching is there, whether you believe it or not. This is ooh. What do you guys actually think? Like, I'll start with myself. So, I know. Well, I believe because I've been taught, right, that Jesus is there.
Yeah.
But it's just so hard for me to like picture that Jesus, like Almighty, you know.
I know exactly
is
what
Jesus,
you mean.
and he is in a.
I always found the Croissant hard to grasp as well. That like I'm like basically eating Jesus.
Yeah.
But like the notion of just first of all the notion of how he turned himself to bread is like, God all powerful.
Sorry, the way you phrased that reminded me of the dumb Rick and Morty meme where he turned himself into a pickle. When you said he turned himself into bread. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my son.
Are we keeping this in the whole Rick and Morty thing? Are we keeping that?
He turned himself into a piece of bread. Holiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, but it's in the same notion, you could say he just really humbled himself but when he came down as Jesus, because he could have been born as whoever, a king, an emperor. He said he was born in a stable. He wasn't even born in a house. He was born where an animal eats, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it always makes me think actually. I remember when I was little, I was like, oh, if I lived during Jesus' time, I'd love to meet him. Like, I would know it's Jesus.
Who wouldn't?
But now that I think about it, I probably wouldn't. I think I'd probably walk past him and be like, wow, and not know it's Jesus.
Yeah.
Just now, I guess.
That is like the Christian teaching to just like not judge people by just what you see, and then obviously love everyone. But obviously, it's got an innate human nature to sort of be more compelled to help someone who looks powerful.
Yeah.
And just respect them more.
True.
At the end of the day, what is the difference really between them and just the beggar in the corner?
Yeah. True.
But
That's
taking this back to the Eucharist. Because we sort of different traits, right? Back when I was younger, I don't think I believed the Eucharist was actually Jesus.
I mean, same here.
I think, I just, for me, it was more so just what made me accept and understand that it was Jesus was just the notion that I just thought about it and, well, Jesus is everywhere. I just buy that notion that he is everywhere. He is in that bread.
Yeah.
Right? And just based off of that, just as a baseline, he is in that bread.
Yeah.
In the Eucharist.
I think a large reason why when I was younger I didn't really consider it much and I didn't really realise that it was literally Jesus in the Eucharist was because partly because when I was younger I also didn't understand the distinction between Anglicanism and Catholicism anyway. I just thought Christianity was Christianity. I thought everyone went to Mass.
Same.
And that kind of thing. Actually, I'm actually, when I was younger, I was guilty of so you know when you go to receive communion, you can receive on the tongue or on the hand. Like, I always try to receive on the tongue, and back then, mostly on the tongue. But being like, I don't know, 8 years old or something, I was like, oh, I'm going to receive on my hands, because, that's true, though. Do something different, which is already wrong. And what I did was, when the priest gave me the host in my hands, I literally carried it back to my bench. And I don't even understand why. I guess I was just bored and just being naughty. And thanks be to God, there was an old guy in the pew in front of us. Because my mum didn't notice this, and he noticed, and he was like, I think he just went like, naughty, to me. And then so I freaking shoveled it in my mouth and ate it. But obviously, by that point, that was kind of already had been somewhat profaned, I think. Obviously, at the time, I didn't understand it properly, but thanks be to God, that old guy told me off because I needed that. And now I have a much better understanding. But I'm guilty of doing that.
That topic of like receiving hand on the tongue, it's so confusing to me.
I do feel quite strongly about it, but
I understand why you'd receive it on the tongue because obviously reverence and you don't want to like drop bits.
Also makes it harder for someone to steal a host from a church.
Oh yeah. That too. True.
I mean, what if 7-year-old me was actually like a 28-year-old Satanist trying to steal the host? It would have been easy for me to walk straight out without my hands. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, but I think it's kind of confusing to me because when I received my first Holy Communion in Spain, I had to receive by tongue. But then when I moved here into my parish, they were like, receive by the hand. And I was like, well, what do I do? So ever since I've been here, I just use my hand. And when I go to Spain, I receive by the tongue. So it feels like there's no like
consensus.
Yes, there's no consensus.
There isn't really a consensus.
It's because it's the thing is, there is a consensus, but I feel like people are kind of unaware of it because it's partly a cultural thing, but it's also partly like a parish by parish thing. Some priests will gravitate more towards giving it on the hand, so that parishioners will be used to that. And some priests will be more traditionalist and they'll encourage on the tongue. Like some churches will have communion rails where you kneel down and receive on the tongue. And some churches don't. So it's kind of and also. I mean, the thing, I think so obviously receiving in the hand is allowed within the church, obviously, because so many people do it. But I'm pretty sure that Catholic doctrine on receiving the Eucharist, you should receive on the tongue. And like the whole idea of receiving on the hand was like, I think it's like a temporary measure
Is this because of COVID? Or?
I mean, well, obviously it was, during COVID it became more of a prevalent thing and it kind of reignited the whole debate, but before that as well, like the whole idea of receiving in the hand, usually that's like a exception that's granted to like a diocese or parish or country church, and it's not. It shouldn't really be the norm. So go back to receiving on the tongue, Carmen. Be based like me and Igor.
It feels foreign to me to do it here, but. I will try.
From my experience and just from what I do know, I feel like it's just the Anglosphere. So
it is,
UK, US.
I do think English-speaking countries are more inclined to receive on the
because like in continental Europe, like every Polish house I've been to, like it's always in the mouth. When I was in Italy, it was on the mouth. I know from like talking to others and just seeing stuff online that most of Europe, does to them via mouth. But then, for some reason, it's just a really big jump when you go, like just the Anglosphere, because there it's very much dominated by taking it by hand. And I wonder if that's got something to do with the part of, because I imagine a lot of it, like our other English-speaking countries got it from Britain, and I imagine Britain probably got it from the whole conflicts between Anglicanism and Catholicism.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't know where the tradition of receiving the hand really stemmed from in the West. I know that in some like Eastern Catholic places, I think actually sometimes culturally they do receive on the hand, but it's very different. I don't know if there's some Eastern Catholic, or maybe I'm thinking Orthodox, but like they receive communion on the hand, but like they don't pick it up with their fingers, they like raise it to their mouth like that, so that they don't touch it with their fingertips and stuff like that. I don't know, so there's like I said, there's a cultural element to it. But I do think in church teaching the norm is on the tongue. It's just people have kind of forgotten that, I think, because on the hand's become more common now. And I don't know, well, when we go to Mass on Sundays, most people receive on the hand.
True.
So if anyone coming in sees that, they assume that's the way you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a mouth. It's not really something people think about.
It's not something most people think about. Most people don't think about it.
Like you just see whatever that's there, you just copy that. And it's just because muscle memory at that point. Yeah. So.
But I do think that it's something that people do need to think about more and be more aware of in the church. Because like when you get used to just receiving on the hand, then you just kind of start to get used to that, and I feel you kind of forget that it's Christ in your hand.
I would argue though. Couldn't you still get used to it, even if you receive?
Oh yeah. You can even if you receive on the tongue, you can get used to that process and just do it mechanically and not actually think about it. Of course, that's a possibility. But I think from my own experience and from what I've read online, the general sentiment or feeling is that most people who receive on the tongue tend to have a high level of reverence for the Eucharist than people who receive on the hand, because they are. Well, it depends what group of people you're sampling it from, but it tends to be a smaller group. And then when you have a smaller group of people doing a certain thing, they tend to be more dedicated.
I mean, to be fair, I think it just makes logical sense because it's more humbling. Yeah. Like as opposed to this kind of feels like begging as well, but. It's like you're asking for.
You're expecting it, basically.
You are expecting it. Then if it's like via mouth, it's like it's almost like
you're putting yourself. I mean, the thing is also through the mouth. Like you're in a sense you're vulnerable, so you're completely giving yourself up to Christ in that moment, to invite Him into your heart. And I think as well, like there's the whole deal. Like, well, the priest obviously handles the host with his hands, but his hands are consecrated. And besides, a priest, when he's celebrating Mass, he's celebrating it persona Christi, as Christ anyway. So, it's pretty much Christ doing it himself.
I was listening to my podcast this morning
to this podcast. I will say from personal experience, as someone who's experienced both hands, both via mouth, and then kneeling whilst receiving it. It does feel like it is like a stepping stone where it feels a lot more reverent and holy than when you are just completely humbling yourself, because you don't feel it much when you do this.
True.
When you receive it by the mouth, which like I'm used to like my whole life going to Polish Mass. It does feel a lot more.
It's more special.
Right? And then maybe like 3 years ago, I started kneeling whilst receiving communion because like my auntie taught me to do that. I was thinking, wait, why was I doing this before? Like the first time I kneeled before the priest receiving communion. It didn't feel like I was completely giving myself to God. And like afterwards, I did genuinely think about. Like, why was I not doing this before? It feels so much better. It feels so much more fulfilling.
I've never done that before. I don't know. It'd be out of my comfort zone to do it.
But I mean,
But it's for God.
Yeah.
It's not
God
for anyone
calls
else,
us out
it's
of
for
our
God.
comfort
Like,
zone.
speaking about this with like various people, I think comfort and just like embarrassment is a big problem.
That's a huge thing.
I don't want to stand out. You know?
Yeah, I mean, when I came to uni here for the first time, I went to my first mass on campus. I was very nervous about that because at that point I was receiving. I mean, I've always more or less received on the tongue, just a few times here and there, and that one awful, horrific occasion where I'm not gonna give that moment the dignity of repeating it, but yeah. So when I came up to receive communion, because I was like looking at, because I sat at the back, I was looking who was going up to communion, seeing everyone receiving the hand, I was like, oh, okay. But when I came up, I think, do you remember Zabe?
Yes, yeah.
I saw him kneel down, and I was like, oh, someone, and that helped bolster my confidence.
Wasn't he Anglican or something?
He was a convert from Islam, and I think he went to, I think maybe Orthodoxy possibly, and then to Catholicism, I think, or something like that. Yo, Zabe, if you're watching this, I miss you, man, and your immaculate drip, your hats, your suits. Hope you're doing well.
God bless.
God bless.
God bless.
But anyway.
I'm gonna add that too.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
But I received on the tongue and everything, and it was, went fine and everything. And Father Andrew had a word with me. He was like, he gave me a thumbs up for us. I was like, okay, that's a relief. Because, like, I think we're very fortunate when you have a priest who's perfectly happy giving it on the tongue. Because it sounds as if, like, it sounds weird that, like, oh, well, why would a priest deny giving it to you in the tongue? But, I mean, COVID is one thing.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there are plenty of videos out there of priests denying people communion
My
on the tongue.
priest.
Your own
My own
priest?
parish priest.
Oh my goodness.
That's how I started receiving communion by the hand.
He can't do that. As a priest, he's not allowed to deny you communion on the tongue if you're
Well, I remember, when was this? I think I was like, how old was I? 12? Around that age.
I mean, to be fair, I'm not expecting you to give like a doctrinal defense of it at that age. But
Call him out. Excommunicate
I'm
him.
not calling him out. It's just my experience.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I just went up to receive, and then he asked me if I had received communion, and I said yes. So he was like, put your hands out then. And I was like, what? So ever since then, I just did it like that. So,
I mean, and this is why I mean, like, it varies on like a parish level, because it depends on the priest you have. Some priests are more inclined to give it on the tongue, and some more in the hand. And after COVID, I think that intensified somewhat.
Yeah.
So when you say that priests are allowed to deny communion,
well, they can deny communion if they think you're not fit to receive communion
right.
because you're in mortal sin. They can do that.
That's
but what I'm saying is that if they have no genuine reason to deny you it because of sin, they can't refuse to give you communion on the tongue.
I thought, because I was thinking, like, do you mean it specifically that you can deny it? You can't deny by mouth, but like you can deny if they do like it by hand.
Within good reason, a priest can deny communion to someone if they have good reason to believe that they're not worthy of receiving it. But there's a difference between being not worthy of receiving it and wanting to receive it on the tongue, which is obviously way different. If any, and so those priests. Look, okay, I'm not a priest. I'm not saying I know better than priests, but I'm just saying, if you are a priest who gives communion in the hand primarily and you discourage people from receiving on the tongue, just maybe read up on church doctrine on the matter a bit more. You went to 8 years of seminary, not me, so it's your decision at the end of the day, but I do think that there are lots of priests out there who aren't as aware of it, and so they do things like that. And like I said, COVID made things way worse.
Which, like last episode, we represented Father Andrew.
Yeah,
Hey, Father Andrew also is very keen on that idea of receiving it by mouth, which he still primarily grants it by hand, because that's how it goes up.
And he can't deny people it on the hand.
Whenever he does speak about receiving it via mouth, you can tell he's like very keen on that idea. Like he seems very glad that people want to do it.
Yeah.
And he even supported that idea of people doing it as like one mass. I remember.
But the fact that there isn't a consensus is kind of confusing, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
you don't know if you go to another parish, they'll probably do the same.
Yeah.
Or if you receive by hand, they'll be like, no, receive by tongue.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Well, I think, well, again, this is kind of like, I feel there are far more priests who are saying, no, receive on the hand, not the tongue, than priests saying, receive on the tongue, not the hand. Because the issue is, it's, because reception on the tongue should be the primary form of reception of communion, really. But obviously, it is granted on the hand. But the issue is, people, like the priests who prefer to give it to parishioners on the tongue, like they're aware of the doctrine on the matter, so they're also aware that they can't deny to give it on the hand, because it's been, like, I guess, allowed. But priests who don't want to give it to a parishioner on the tongue, they're not doing it because of a doctrinal reason. They're doing it like sometimes because it's just habit, or sometimes they might. I don't know. Sometimes you get priests who they think it's old-fashioned to receive on the tongue, and I mean, so it's. I mean, priests are people too with their own like opinions and stuff. I mean. Those Jesuits, for example, that's a whole can of worms. Although,
Jesuits are
to give credit to the Jesuits, like, I did watch a very nice YouTube video the other day by a Jesuit on, like...
Pope Francis is a Jesuit.
So. Yeah, well, so, another can of worms, but yeah, no, I mean, the fact that Jesuits is a Pope at the moment should say something that the Jesuits are. I mean, they're fine. But I love Jesuits, they're fine. I don't have issues against them. It's just certain individuals. James Martin.
Wait, what was that, Jamie?
James Martin.
What? So
it's probably better if we don't just start slamming different groups. Protestants, Jesuits.
We gotta
people who receive on the hand.
That's how we get traction. That's how we get viewership.
That's how we get it taken
spicy,
down.
Okay.
University is going to delete.
I think it's a worthy sacrifice, though. So like, to really get the podcast out there, go spark debate, to get it
out there for maybe like 10 minutes before it's taken down. For those brief 10 minutes, it'll be doing a lot of good.
I was going to say staying on the topic of the Eucharist, Eucharistic miracles.
Yes.
They're interesting. Have you ever thought, like, I don't know, this is just me, it's probably just me, I don't know, maybe. Like, when I receive communion, I just want it to turn into blood.
You want it to?
What?
Like,
you want it to?
Like, I just want...
You want the real deal?
I feel like I'm exposing myself now. Anyway, so I just want, like, I don't know, I want who doesn't want a miracle? But I just want, like, to feel
you just
Jesus
want to
in
experience
my
a
mouth.
miracle whilst taking communion.
Yeah, I've heard it happen to somebody.
But specifically, you want it to be blood.
Well, that's what happens.
It's what happens, yeah. So
turns into flesh.
Yeah.
With type AB blood every time.
Is that a thing?
Every time there's been a Eucharistic miracle where the host has turned into flesh and like bled, the blood's always been AB.
I need to verify this now.
And also when they examine, they find, I think, striated heart muscle.
Yes, that's what I've heard, yeah.
So,
Ooh.
Yeah. So to be fair, if you wanted to prove Catholicism's truth, you just really need to point to all of these things, and like there is no way you could explain it from a secular perspective.
True.
It's not something you can really say.
I just want to verify as well, because it's interesting that it's specifically type AB, because type AB is the universal recipients that can be transferred to all blood types.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, so it's like, is there like a reason then, or?
It could be. Yeah,
well, it's got the gay man. I mean, it makes sense that his blood type would be the most common one.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to quote from scripture, but I'm really bad.
Sense,
it can be transferred to all our blood types.
Yeah.
What's that quote in scripture from Jesus? Like, something you don't have life within you. I'm really bad with scripture.
Unless you like eat my flesh and blood, you're not.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Along those lines, I think it's got to do with the baby.
It's funny that it's funny that you wanted it to turn into flesh. Like when
I don't know.
Because when younger me found out about Eucharistic miracles, I became scared of it happening. I was like, I mean, I love you, Jesus, but like, please don't turn into flesh.
No. This is more like after.
Okay.
As a kid, I didn't really. To be honest, I didn't really think. I knew Jesus was there, but I didn't really think about.
Yeah. As a kid, I didn't even know these miracles were a thing.
Well, when I say kid, I mean like early teenager, like 12, for example.
Yeah.
Because like that was when my mum was like giving me like Polish Catholic magazines.
Oh wow. She did well.
No. Obviously, aside from God, all credit to my mum.
Future Catholic parents, learn from your Polish mothers.
True treasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Na pewno.
Oczywiście.
What does that mean? Now I'm left out. I don't know what's going on.
Next episode, you know some Polish, don't worry.
Wow.
Na pewno just means for sure, pretty much. And oczywiście means what, absolutely, of course.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same kind of word. I say na pewno more because it's easy to say than oczywiście.
Na pewno. No.
The only Polish thing I know is Papa Ovicie, I think.
Papa Ovicie. Well, Papa means...
That's what I learned in Krakow. In what do you think? Papa Ovicie. I don't know. Something.
Do you know what that means?
Wait.
Papa.
Because Papa means bye. Like, it's like Papa.
I have a feeling like.
Really?
Wait, I recognize the melody.
I thought it had to do with the Pope.
Is you sure it's Papa and not Flower?
Papa Ovicie.
Oh, I feel like it's Power.
I think it's
I
Flower.
think it's Power.
It's Flower, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Power.
I've learned it like this for
It's admirable that you somewhat could construct it in your mind and remember it. So
so it's what?
Easy.
Flower.
I think Flower. I mean,
I've
heard that hymn before, but I don't know off by heart, so I can't complete it myself.
I've always learned it as Papa, because I thought, they're singing to the Pope, like, welcome, or something.
I mean, that's a valid line of reasoning, to be fair.
Wow.
I can't blame you for that.
So what is it? Let me learn it right. What was it?
Flower.
Flower.
I'm pretty sure it's Flower Oiche, by the way, as well.
Flower Oiche.
Yeah, because that means like...
Good pronunciation.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good. You're basically Polish.
You're basically Polish now.
This is going to be like Flower the podcast is learning Polish. But Flower Oiche means like glory to God, basically. Or glory to the Father specifically. God the Father.
Wow.
With
So
Oiche,
all these years, 7 years, I've
I don't
had
think
that in my head.
Because I was like listening to you saying Ovice, and I'm thinking, is that a word? Am I like tripping myself or? I'm pretty sure that's not a word.
I mean, in my experience though, like whenever I've been in Poland and like tried to say something in Polish to a Polish person, however much I butcher it, I think they're just happy that I'm trying to speak Polish. So
Polish people are just gonna, we're desperate. We're desperate for people to indulge themselves in Polish culture.
Yeah.
We're crying out.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow. Interesting.
Which, talking about Polish culture now, because I wanted to mention the story, but I sort of forgot, and it was when we were talking about churches and the whole communism repression. Because Poland also wasn't allowed to build churches or have churches, but I think there's specifically some line that said, on this land you can't build a church. And so some Polish people built churches on rivers because on water, make them like water-borne churches. Because technically that doesn't count technically.
Wow.
Nice.
Interesting. I wonder why Poland, who is predominantly Catholic, country, but then so is Spain, so is Ireland, so is another country. I don't know, but they're very secular. I don't know why is that. It's the same Euro. Well, obviously different countries, but like they're more. They are more secular in general.
In what sense? In what sense?
In the culture, Polish culture is very Catholic. You said
right.
Yeah. But I would say Spain, in general, Spain is a Catholic country, but really the culture. Well, I guess the culture stems from Catholicism, but today is not. It's not really Catholic.
Well, I mean, Poland's had a decline like that as well because it's just kind of the way it goes.
This is all over Europe.
I don't know. I mean, in terms of Poland, I mean, from a visual perspective, a large reason why it might not appear as Catholic is because, like, it was under communist rule for so long. So you have a bunch of these concrete block buildings from the communist period, and that doesn't exactly say Catholicism too much. I don't know. I mean, whenever I've been in Poland, like, you can see so many just examples of Catholic culture because, like, if you're just driving along the road, you'll usually come across like these little shrines to Mary. And like it's a cultural thing, like if you're going past, you cross yourself, which is a bit difficult if you're riding your bike on a slightly bumpy road.
Oh, I do that most of all. Like if I was just in the crossroads, I wouldn't feel like it. But if I'm on the bike, like struggling to survive, and that's when it's coming out. I need to pray to make sure I don't know.
Although to be fair though, I guess my experience of Polish like culture, it's more kind of rural-esque because I have been to Polish cities, but I've spent more time in like my grandparents' village. So I guess my perspective could be skewed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be more.
The cities are more
in rural areas.
The cities are more westernized.
I mean, in terms of like secularization, I'd say in terms of Europe or just the West, the West. Poland's I wouldn't say Poland's as secular as most of the other countries.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
But it's definitely a lot more secular than like say countries in Africa or in Asia even. And I think that's just kind of just how like the whole Western views on humanity, because it's more individualistic. You know, you can do your own thing as opposed to like you have to live by like these collective rules.
I guess as well you kind of say it depends partly on like at what stage of development a country's at, because like in terms of its economic system and stuff like that, it's going to affect things.
True.
Because like if a country's like if you have a first world country, there's so many layers of like bureaucracy and government and social and local government and trading laws and stuff. So I guess you could say maybe because you have so much of that, less focus is explicitly put on the religious side maybe because I mean like in the third world countries, I mean the religions are on the rise anyway compared to the West, where it's actually because in the West religion is declining, but in like poorer countries generally religion is on the rise,
and like that's why like Christianity is still like gaining numbers.
Because of actually my uncle did say that.
And I think that like a bunch of I don't think I can name them, but there are a bunch of countries in Africa which are largely Christian, and like they're some of the happiest countries in the world. So I think that could be because they have more of a focus on God, and they don't have not that they don't have to worry about the practical side of running a country, but in a sense they're less involved in it because it's not as developed and you don't have so many layers of stuff to think about. Possibly.
Could be.
Yeah, could be.
That's interesting.
Before we go any further, I just need to quickly thank someone because you guys probably saw in the group chat, but I asked that musical artist if we could use his song for the intro and outro.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he said yes. So, Hallowed, if you're watching this, thank you very much for allowing us to use your music.
Thank you.
My God, represent. Standing ovation. Come on.
Oh my.
I don't think we're on camera.
Yeah, I think our heads are
for
shot. But anyway, so thank you very much for that, Hallowed. Anyone who's watching who's unfamiliar with him, you can find him on Instagram, YouTube, or Spotify, I think. He's a Catholic singer and music creator, so please do look out for him and have a listen if you like his music. So thank you very much, Hallowed. Appreciate it.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Because I forgot to say that yesterday. So, to be fair, yesterday when we were recording, that was before I asked him. So anyway.
And is it cheating if I ask what? I think I already asked, but what did you discuss yesterday apart from the FBI thing?
We talked about Roblox.
Oh,
what's important?
It was more so Igor giving us a lecture on the dynamics of Roblox.
Okay, just to quickly get back to that whole discussion, there's like people recreating Catholic Mass in Roblox.
Yeah.
And so like I was...
Oh, actually I saw that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And so like I'm just thinking, like the main point that I was getting to linked with Catholicism was how it's gonna, like what's gonna happen digitally like in the Catholic sphere, but he's like, well, are there gonna be like masses held virtually now? Or
I mean,
because
technically
they need to,
it
like,
happened in COVID.
I feel like there's definitely gonna have to be some establishment in like
That would
the
be
actual church about it all.
That would be weird, I think.
So,
I think like
keep it.
Yeah, no, I think yesterday when we were talking about like me, Igor and Ben, we pretty much agree that like I mean you still need to physically be at mass.
Yeah.
Like virtual stuff doesn't replace it. But I think that the point Igor's more making is that like because how technology is becoming more prominent, the church might need to issue some form of decree or statement on it just to have some doctrine in place. Because the internet and all that digital stuff is still quite a new thing. Like it's really new in the history of the church. It's only really like the past 30 years.
True.
So it's still young in that sense. So I think at some point the church might need to say something about it. But but not like but no, still physically go to mass. No excuse unless you like have broken legs and you have to stay at home. But
then you can go on Roblox mass.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you about Roblox mass.
Me specifically.
Yeah, and then we kind of like went into a discussion about like how, as a Catholic, how should you represent Catholicism within like fictional work? Well, I talked about how like as a writer, if I wrote a Catholic character and had him do something that like if a real Catholic did in real life, if it would be considered like scandalous. But if I wrote a character who's Catholic doing something scandalous within like a novel, would that be scandalous in of itself, or would it be okay? I think the general idea we came to at the end was that it's within a fictional world, and if you can create a distinction between the fiction and the reality, it's okay. And as long as in the fiction you're not like depicting that thing to be a positive thing, and you can do that directly or you can imply it. So but it was interesting, because like obviously like I would like to write novels, and I've got some ideas, but like at least two of them are like pretty Catholic in nature. So it's just like wondering how much creative freedom do you have when you're dealing with Catholicism in fiction.
Okay, interesting.
To
me, it sounds a bit like how do I explain this? Like how you are online. Like how we have social media. We should act online the way we would act in real life. So kind of similar to that, I guess. Yeah.
It's like when you're in the call, all the rage comes out all of a sudden. At home, you're a completely same person.
Yeah.
There's like kind of that separation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parts of life, but.
I mean, we also talked about because I thought it'd be cool to like look at the saint of the day every time we did an episode, and yesterday it was Saint Scholastica.
Was that?
I mean, we were completely unfamiliar with her as well until yesterday, but apparently she was the sister of Saint Benedict.
Apparently, she was the sister.
Wow.
And she's the
Benedict who's Saint Benedict?
I think I think the one who founded the Order of Monks. I think the Benedict.
The Benedictine. Of course. Okay. Do you know? I was thinking of Emeritus, who just passed away.
There was something I wanted to say about Pope Benedict like earlier on. It was relevant to the conversation. What was it? It was like I was going to quote him. It was when we were talking about like comfort. And he said that you're not made for comfort, you're made for greatness.
That's a great quote.
Rest easy, King. I hope you're having a good time in heaven. Anyway, but where was I going with that? Saint Scholastica. Apparently she's the patron saint of I think nuns, but also patron saint of people seeking shelter from violent storms.
Yeah.
Because like apparently the story is that like her brother was visiting her in like a house because like she couldn't enter the monastery being a woman, so they would meet like halfway in the house. And she like started her own like order of nuns as well. And like her brother wanted to go back home to the monastery, but she like wanted him to stay there for that night. But what ended up happening was a violent thunderstorm forced him to stay in the end. So he stayed there the night, and then he went back the next day, and like a few days later, she died. So
and then a few days
later. And then just about a few days, but then shortly after that, he also died. But apparently before he died, he saw a vision of his sister ascending to heaven. So it's cool stuff, yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, and I think today, I don't think it's a feast today, but it's the Our Lady of Lourdes. I think it's like an optional memorial or something.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought that was in like wait, what day is it today? 13th?
11th.
Oh, 11th.
Because I think there's only 2 feast days.
I don't think it's a feast day today.
Like,
I think when I looked it up, it was like an optional memorial.
I think they changed the date of a feast day. Because I remember reading something where I think first her feast day was when she first got the apparition.
Oh yeah, but like it's not Saint. It's not the feast day of Saint. It's not named Saint Bernadette today. It's just Our Lady of Lourdes apparently, and this is like it's like a day of prayer for the sick.
Oh right, yes, I heard about this. I thought it was on the 13th. I don't know why I had that in my head, but
I mean, I've just been following my Catholic calendar up in my room and just then googling whatever it says on the day.
Wow,
but,
that's good.
But I mean, we're all familiar with Bernadette for the most part, aren't we?
Yeah.
Although when I was looking her up earlier today, she was like exhumed after she died, like a surprising amount of times.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an interesting thing to think about.
I get creeped out about excavations and all that stuff.
So Carmen, so you're telling me, so you're telling me that saints being dug up and all that stuff gives you the heebie-jeebies.
I mean, I'm scared of statues.
But yet
I'm scared of statues.
Oh, okay.
So if you're gonna bring a whole cadaver,
but, I mean, you said you were happy with Christ, the bread becoming blood in your mouth.
What if a statue
that's
became
different.
flesh? What if a statue became flesh and blood in front of your eyes? How do you feel?
No, that's demonic. That is not. That is not Jesus.
But what if it's a vision given to you by God, though? I think there was something when like there's a statue of Our Lady in America or somewhere, and like her expression changes sometimes. Like sometimes it's like sorrowful, and sometimes it looks happier. And I think in recent years it's been more on the sorrowful side, which makes sense. We're sorry, Mary.
No, that's.
Yeah. But that's a good point, though. You do need to be careful with visions and that kind of thing because they can be demonic. Yeah. Speaking of demonic stuff, this isn't.
Not that I like.
I mean, it's intriguing because it's like a spooky topic and like people generally gravitate towards that. But it's not really that interesting. But like half of this story has already kind of been told yesterday. But so a couple days ago, I was basically just locking my room door and I felt something fall to the ground next to me. And I pick it up and it's like a little metal Saint Benedict medal. Yeah, and Saint Benedict's like the patron of exorcists. Yeah. But I don't know. I did at the time. I didn't know where it came from. And me and Igor had a conversation the previous day about our vocations. So now that I was standing there thinking like, is this some kind of sign?
And you're getting onto this from the word demonic?
Yeah. No, I'm getting to that. I've got this demonic exorcist patron Saint Benedict medals anyway. But as it turned out, it came from like a cross I have in my key ring because it has like 2 little Benedict medals stuck together in the middle, and so one of them had just come loose and fallen off. Whether that's a coincidence or it is still a message, I don't know. But we'll see. But the thing is, last night I was just getting ready for bed and I took my jumper off too quickly. And you might notice I'm missing my crucifix.
Yeah, that's right.
I took my jumper off, and the little metal ring that held the crucifix onto my chain broke. So my crucifix goes flying onto the floor and I'm like,
so the room
was a crucifix drop. So basically, so I mean the chain itself was fine. It was just like a little metal ring that the ring of the crucifix was on, that then you thread through the thing. Anyway, so I picked it up, I kiss it, put it on the shelf, I'm like, I need to figure out how to fix that sometime. But anyway, it's had me thinking now, I'm like, so I carry around like 3 Saint Benedict related things. I've got my rosary ring, which is Saint Benedict, I've got my crucifix, and I had that key ring, So the key ring came off first. Then my crucifix came off, and now all I have left is the ring, and I'm wondering if this is like some kind of like spiritual bulletproof vest situation where like both those times I've like dodged a demonic attack or something.
Maybe now that you're mentioning it, maybe now nothing happened to the ring now, but I feel like that'd be a bit of a shame. I feel like if something happened to the ring, I feel like Third time's the charm. I think at that point we can confirm that's what was happening.
Because at first I had been wondering if it was God trying to like tell me about my vocation, but then when it happened with the crucifix, I was like, am I just being demonically attacked or something? And is it just stripping down the layers of my defense? I mean, it's probably fine. And to be fair, it's important to not get too superstitious when it comes to that kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, it's not like these things that we wear that protects us. It's God.
We were talking about
grace.
touching wood yesterday as well.
Oh yeah, and like superstitious habits.
Oh, that's an interesting
yeah, but sorry, but yeah, like you talking about the demonic and stuff just reminded me of that.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
But
that's scary.
Yeah.
That is scary. Yeah, actually, I just remembered what I was going to say. Yeah, when I was little, I always wanted to see Mary because, well, my grandma used to say, I have two siblings. I have my brother and my sister, and then I'm the older one. And Fatima, the three siblings that saw Mary. So I was like, oh, maybe we could be. So I always wanted to see Mary. But then I was like, I'm scared of statues. So if she appeared, I think I would pass out.
Actually, that's an understandable reaction to being exposed to Mary, who's literally the mother of God anyway.
But then at the same time, how do you know it's actually Mary? Oh, it could also be a demonic.
If it's a demonic apparition.
I feel like a very good topic to have would be the whole nature of visions.
Yeah. I mean,
as apparitions.
I follow a couple of like exorcist priests. I mean, I think there's three. There's one's Father Chad Ripperger, which is literally his name is literally Chad, so alpha male. But anyway, I'm
sorry. Don't you need to answer?
Anyway, so Chad Ripperger, he's great, and then there's Father Vincent Lampert, and there's also another one I came across.
Yes, I know.
On
Both
Instagram.
of them.
And then I think there's Father something Rossetti, but they're all exorcists.
And I think I know all of them.
Yeah, very good.
I've been watching documentaries.
Chad?
I didn't know his name was Chad. I just know him as Father.
I mean, that's all you need to know, to be fair. But from what I remember, I don't remember who specifically said this, but like if let's say you do come across an apparition and you're not sure if it's demonic or if it's heavenly in origin, then like you can like basically demand that it like crosses itself or like says like the word Jesus or like glory be to Jesus. Or basically, if you demand or ask them to acknowledge God or Christ as Lord, if it's demonic, it's going to be incapable of doing that. So that's kind of one way of doing it.
I think I heard something about like holy water, but how can you throw holy water at it?
Well, I think holy water is more of a preventative in a sense, unless you're like an exorcist and you're using it in an exorcism. Because at the end of the day, like you're not, even though holy water is like a powerful thing, it's not like a weapon you can just like take from a holster and like fling it at an apparition, Although it was, you're welcome to try.
Just get like a water.
As long as you've got your faith in God and not the water itself, then it should work. True. But also, I heard that people who have like experienced apparitions of a demonic nature, but like presenting themselves as something holy, like there's always been a sense that something's off about them.
Really?
Like Anglican church.
Whoa!
I'm sorry.
Well.
I don't mean it as a literal one-to-one. I meant it more as just a slight reference, just to an analogy, a bit of an analogy, okay? Wow. A jokey analogy.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's tricky though, isn't it? But yeah, no, it is it's intriguing, but also a bit of a spooky topic. I find I have to be careful when I'm like watching videos about like exorcisms and that whole kind of sphere. I mean, I always watch from a Catholic source anyway, because you should only look at it from that. But but then it has me thinking about it after I've like finished watching or reading about it. I'm like, it's probably not healthy for me to be thinking about demons and stuff all the time. And then because I think I see something in the corner of my vision, but like, yo, what's going on?
Is it weird that I watch those things at night?
I wouldn't say it's weird. I would say it's probably not very sensible.
We're finding out very interesting things about you today.
But you shouldn't be scared of it.
I mean, if you have faith in God, demons they can do nothing. those, Soyton can't do anything.
That is actually because I feel like every child just has a bit of a fear of the dark. And then I sort of grew out of that by just thinking, oh, why am I fearing? I know God's got my back, so nothing's gonna happen to me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the story.
So if you ever have children that fear the dark, teach them that God's got their back, and nothing's gonna let anything happen to them.
Yeah, teach them the Saint Michael prayer, and Saint Michael left hook the demons back down into hell.
True.
Yeah. Is that a pear?
Here's a fact.
For a second, I thought it was like just a really fat gherkin or like cucumber you were just
Oh, yeah.
chowing down on. So speaking of like apparitions and stuff and that spooky side of things, have you guys ever experienced like something that offers somewhat supernatural nature, possibly spiritual, that you experienced? I have one story.
Go on,
you sure?
Yeah.
Not much really happened in it, but so I must have been like, this was at least 7 years ago, maybe more. My family and I used to live in a bungalow, but like my brother's room, and because me and my little brother shared a room, and it was like up a couple steps to the rest of the house. But anyway, so it's the middle of the night, whatever. So I get up to go pee, and so I go to my bedroom door, go down the steps, and like it's like a corridor area, I guess. You have like the corridor leading to the rest of the house, my parents' bedroom around the corner, and then like the bathroom and the toilet and like the drying closet. And like in front of the drying closet, when I get to the bottom of the stairs, now it's always been tricky to like describe it visually, but I swear I saw like some weird like skinny hunched over figure standing like in front of the drying closet, like kind of like, I don't know, like I didn't see its face or anything, but like it was no hair in it or anything. The best way to describe it would be, imagine Gollum from Lord of the Rings, but if his skin was like less sort of smooth looking and more kind of dried out and of a more like not quite brown colour instead of grey. And and like, and I remember I was paralysed by fear. I remember like shutting my eyes and just standing on that spot for a good several seconds, because I was partly like half asleep anyway, so my thoughts weren't quite gathered anyway. So I come down the steps, see this thing, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck? So I just, in natural kid fashion, I just shut my eyes and don't look at it.
That's very creepy.
And then I just fumble my way to the toilet with my eyes closed because I roughly know where it is. I bolt the door, I go for a wee, and then I'm like, I don't want to go back out into the corridor now. Wow. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to like call out to my parents or anything, but I guess being a kid and
being a kid, that's the first thing I would do.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm just built different, Carmen.
Oh, sorry.
But, I mean, in this case, it's not a positive thing. But and I think what I did, when I unlocked the door, I kept my eyes shut again, and I kind of felt my way along the wall into the bathroom and closed the door again, washed my hands, and then I think I finally gathered up the strength to go back out into the corridor. And from what I remember, I don't think I saw it. I think like it was gone or whatever. But I'm pretty sure I pretty much booked it from the bathroom back to my bedroom after that. That's like the most vivid thing I can remember. And I was really terrified at the time. I don't know whether it was just being half asleep, and I don't know if I was somehow sleepwalking, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't. And apparently, in that house that we were living in, apparently someone had actually been murdered in there, which we only found out about after we had moved in. So I don't know if there's a spiritual connection between me seeing that and the fact someone was murdered in that house.
That is
creepy.
Oh no.
So
You may have needed an exorcism.
Exorcist, possibly, maybe, yeah. But I don't know if I said much to my parents after that. I mean, I did mention it to my mum at some point after that, obviously, but
Don't they say kids are like more susceptible to seeing things or something like that?
Yeah, well, in the sense that they're more likely to see something that isn't there, or they're
or in the
sense like they're more attuned to that kind of stuff because they're younger and I don't know.
I guess maybe like, you know how some kids sometimes they're playing,
Right.
Yeah.
but then sometimes they'll be like, oh, somebody's standing in the corner, they're my friend or something.
Oh.
And then you're like,
what
what are
horror
you
movie pretty much
watching?
is,
No, but it happens. I've seen loads of videos about that.
I mean, to be fair, like all these horror movies and stuff, it's nice to make fun of them and all, but like they've got a little grain
It's
of
got
truth in them.
something, yeah.
I mean, the Exorcist movie was based on a true story, so
Yeah, and not just kids, animals as well. Apparently, well, dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, animals.
Yeah.
Cats, birds, all of them.
Yeah. Hamsters.
Yeah. I remember I used to not believe at all like all these supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking like ghosts, what? Where? Like, but then I think what kind of pushed me to think there's at least some aspect of supernatural is I would hear stories from my family. And it's like they like with like the whole heart would describe like ghost stories or like just experiences they had. Like my uncle, he had a vision that some lady was like calling for help, and like when he went over, there was like a car crash to I think like in a ravine, and then he looks in and there's like the driver was a woman, and it was the same woman who called out for him, but she's like obviously dead, right? But and then there's a child in the back. And just like my uncle, he's a bit of a joker, right? But he's not a liar, and I just think about that makes me feel like there has to be at least some truth to it. Because I doubt I know my uncle likes to like make up random stories to troll some family members. As a funny tangent, he had a whole half an hour conversation with my granddad pretending to be like a carpet salesman. It's just that's his personality, right? But he always reveals like that it's him. He's making it up or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like with this, he's like I've heard the story multiple times and he's always stuck with it. It's like surely, and the fact that there's so many stories from so many people and not all of them are going to be lies, like there has to be some element there.
I mean, to be honest though, but like, I mean, as Catholics anyway, like it shouldn't be difficult for us to grasp that concept of there being spiritual, like a spiritual world anyway.
We believe in a spiritual realm.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think it's just because a lot of the time that thing's kind of been through like Hollywood and popular fiction, it's kind of been made out to be like a, there's probably plenty of Christians who don't believe in ghosts. And even though I don't know if
but that shocks me though.
Yeah, I mean,
because they don't even believe in the devil either. They think it's it wouldn't make sense if you don't believe in the devil. Then what are you fighting against?
Yeah. Why bother trying to be a good person?
Yeah. Essentially, yeah.
So do they believe hell exists, or?
Well, if they don't believe in the devil, I'm guessing.
They might just believe that.
Yeah, they do. I think no. They have this. Well, I say they. Some of my friends. Some of my friends have this ideology that everyone will go to heaven, whether you're as long as you're a good person, you're gonna go to heaven. Like God wouldn't send you to hell, sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like I don't really know how to argue against that. Well, because it's like God. Yeah, God doesn't send you there.
Yeah, God doesn't send you to hell.
I don't know. It's just I don't know.
I think part of the reason why
it's hard for me to
they think that way is because a large conception of heaven and hell. It's like in a sense that hell is like designed to be a punishment for you. But I think the key thing is hell isn't designed to be a punishment. It's just the natural result of rejecting God. Because if God is goodness in its entirety and essence, so if you reject all goodness, what are you left with? You're left with everything that's bad, in which is just endless, meaningless suffering, which is hell.
So would you say purgatory is the punishment?
Purgatory is less so much punishment, because punishment is like it doesn't matter if you punish someone. It technically doesn't matter whether they learn from it or not. You're just administering justice, I guess, if you're looking at it from like a legal courtroom sense. But the point of purgatory, it's both punishment and it's redemption in that sense, because your suffering is meaningful in that it eventually will lift you to heaven because you've been purified. And
It's
I think that's partly, sorry.
I was just gonna say it's like heaven's a plane, and then purgatory is like the pat down that you have before they let you on. And like the metal detector, like they search for sin,
and the more illicit items you have when you the longer you're gonna stay there. But
that's a good analogy.
Yeah, nice one, Ethan.
Oh, thank you.
That's why you're president.
Oh, thank you. Just for that analogy.
Just for that analogy. But also, purgatory is not meant to be like a place like heaven or hell. It's like meant to be a state anyway, like a state of existence.
As I told you, I struggle with the idea of purgatory. It's not that I don't accept it, it's just difficult to accept. I accept it, but it's difficult to accept.
Well, the thing is, like obviously the suffering side of it doesn't sound desirable, because as a human being, you know, you're inclined to want comfort and to be safe from that kind of thing. But purgatory is a huge mercy, because if heaven is where God is and God is perfect, why should you be able to go anywhere near God if you still have stains on your soul, and those stains haven't been made up for in any way, you know?
I have another question. Sorry.
I mean, by the way, might as well.
So,
just keep in mind, it's like 6:15.
Okay, so. I'll keep it brief. So, Adam and Eve, when they sinned, they were with God, right?
Well, they were in the Garden of Eden, and God would visit them.
But they had, I heard it in the podcast this morning, like preternatural gifts, something gifts. Like they were aware of their sin. Like it's not like they didn't know what they were doing, sort of thing. I don't know. Yeah. Something like that. But they knew God, like they knew Him fully. So when they decided to sin, they knew what would happen. They knew the consequences. Yeah. So, and they had free will. So if we get to heaven, could we still sin?
Well, I don't think so.
Why not?
Well, the point is that in heaven you're in communion with God in the most perfect sense. And the whole point of sin's very much a thing that happens on earth while you're alive. I think, from what I understand from Catholic teaching, once you die, that's it. You're not going to sin anymore. Even in purgatory, you're not going to be sinning. Because sin, as far as I understand, sin is something that because obviously it stems from original sin. But the whole deal with original sin was that then Adam and Eve would have to live a mortal life and, you know, suffer through hardship and work to survive that kind of thing. So sin is tied to mortality in that sense. And I'm pretty sure once you die and your soul leaves your body, then that capacity for sin goes, partly because you're no longer living on earth, so you can't do a lot of things that would be a sin anyway, because you don't have your body anymore. But I think also because at the moment of death, everything becomes clear, I'm pretty sure. And that's why souls in hell have such huge, I don't know if regret is the right word, but they're aware of everything that they've lost by rejecting God, and that's a huge part of their suffering. Sorry, a little bit depressing, but it's important that we talk about this. And it's why the souls in purgatory are joyful in their suffering, because they're completely aware that all the suffering they're going through in purgatory will bring them to heaven eventually.
So Eden was, I also struggle with that a little bit. So.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm not too educated in like where exactly Eden stands, whether it's like, was it a physical place on earth, or was it separated? I mean, there's the whole debate.
It wouldn't make sense if it was symbolic though, because then there'd be no original sin, no? I don't know.
It depends. Well, I guess it depends. Like, you know, I mean, a bunch of people debate on that, I guess. But I mean, like, it doesn't have to be like 100% symbolic or 100% literal. It can be a mixture of both. Personally, it's not. I can't say it's something I think about too much, really, because at the end of the day, I don't. For my own faith, I feel it doesn't really affect it too much whether it is literal or symbolic. As long as it's the truth, I'm satisfied.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't affect my faith. I just kind of ponder over it sometimes.
I mean, sure, it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read like the first early books of the Old Testament in general, it's interesting to wonder if is this symbolic or is this literal? There's like talk of like Nephilim, like giant people, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and I think it's cooler to take it literally. To be fair, because
Yeah. It's
Unfortunately, I've always seen the book of Genesis as like a myth more so than like.
Well, I mean,
like just as like symbology, I guess.
Well, I mean, the church allows that as long as you acknowledge that it's a myth book of truth.
Oh yeah, as in.
As opposed to like ancient.
I mean, if we're going to talk about like personal opinions, like the way I've sort of seen it is like original sin is consciousness, where we can only sin because of the fact that we're conscious, as opposed to animals who don't know what they're doing, so they can't sin.
I kind of take issue with that though, because if consciousness is needed to sin, but they took on original sin when they ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge, even though God told them not to. But how did they come to the conclusion? How did Eve make the decision in her mind to eat the fruit if she hadn't had original sin? So I don't think consciousness is because free will and consciousness are both linked together.
Did Adam and Eve were they immortal before this?
I think
that's in the Bible it says they're immortal.
Although I think when you read Genesis, right before they're kicked out of the garden, after they eat the fruit, I think God says there's something along the lines of like they have to leave the garden out like before they eat of the fruit of like the tree of life or something like that. I think
he says something like they'll be condemned to a life of work or something, blah blah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if I'm making this up, I haven't read it in a long time, sorry. I think he says something like they're gonna die or something like that. They'll end up dying.
Yeah.
So does that mean they were immortal?
Well, as in they'll end up dying as a result of eating the fruit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the whole warning he gives them, is that don't eat of this, otherwise you'll die, which was true. And obviously that's what the devil twisted. To be honest, I mean, I can look it up quickly.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the Bible Gateway.
Because then that goes back to what I said then about, because they knew God. That's heaven. Eden is the optimal earth, no?
I don't know though, because I think it might be more accurate to say Eden was paradise. Because there's a difference between paradise and earth, I feel.
Yeah.
But again...
no, that's what I'm saying. Paradise is essentially heaven, no?
Paradise is like earth if there wasn't sin.
But it's tricky, because you have in translations of the Bible, you have Christ saying to the penitent thief, like, today you'll be with me in paradise. So it's like, wait, does he mean heaven then? Or
I think with that stuff, you need to look at the original words to see if they exactly link to one another. Or they're talking like different stuff, like different concepts.
Genesis 3. Feel free to keep chatting if you like while we do this.
I mean, because again, with paradise, I don't really see it as an actual place. I see it sort of see it more as just.
Okay, I found it in Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. So after they've eaten the fruit and everything, and God's now said, because of this, you're going to have to do all this, and you'll have to do all this. So he says, so the Lord God said, behold, man has become like one of us, for he has knowledge of that which is good and that which is evil. Now we must prevent him from reaching out and taking the fruit of the tree of life, lest he eat it and live forever. So...
lest he eat it and live forever?
Yeah. Which would suggest that, after eating, so if they'd eaten that, they would have somehow gained immortality. But I don't know. And this is again where the whole idea whether Genesis is literal or a symbolic myth that comes into question.
Interesting.
Mm.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
interesting.
Run out of stuff for now. Yeah. So that's...
Yeah.
But if paradise was heaven, then that means that we could still sin. From that perspective, like from
that perspective. But the issue is Adam and Eve, theirs was the original sin. So whereas we already have original sin and we have that awareness of what sin is. And so I think the process which we come to when we sin compared to Adam and Eve is, I was going to say different, but to be honest, it's probably the same actually, because sin is sin at the end of the day. I don't know, it's a good question.
Interesting. Because we still have free will, right? Technically.
Well, yeah. But
but if you're in heaven, there's no evil, so you can't choose, right? I'm being silly. Just doing a whole overlay. So you can't choose. You have no option. You just good.
Yeah. I think you would only want to be good anyway when you're in heaven, because your soul is in that state of purity and communion with God, so you would have no reason to want to sin.
There'd be no temptation.
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar in the sense
there'd be no need for temptation, because you don't need to prove anything anymore.
Yeah, in a sense. I think it's perhaps in a similar vein of thought as why souls in hell are incapable of doing anything virtuous once in hell, in the sense that they're completely separated from all that's good. So, like, all they know is evil in that sense, and all they not desire, but it's all they're capable of, I guess. Because I think there's a difference between things that, I mean, in Catholicism, free will is not defined as the ability to choose to do whatever you want. It's the ability to choose to do the right
what
thing.
You ought to do. Yeah,
what you ought
that
to do.
was in my podcast this morning.
There we go. Which podcast was that?
The one I told you about, Crash Course Catholicism.
I listened to the first 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
She's really good. Yeah.
Not as good as us.
Yeah, we'll still watch us first before you watch them.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching episode 1.1 of Galilee. Thanks for watching and listening. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or you'd like to get involved, contact us. You can email us at UEA Catholic Society Podcast @gmail.com, or you can always message us on our social medias and contact us that way. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you next episode.
Don't miss Patch.